The following podcast was produced in-house for KQEK.com. Welcome to another podcast interview at KQEK.com. I've had to reshift the order of interviews and put a few things on pause due to the completion of an experimental documentary project, VSV 1172. But the first of several podcast uploads for May begins with a conversation with Claudio Simonetti, one of the co-founders of the iconic Italian prog rock group, Goblin. During the 1980s, Simonetti had already started to involve himself with other projects, but he continued to compose film scores for Dario Argento, including the films the director wrote and or produced, such as Demons, which recently enjoyed an anniversary Blu-ray and DVD release in the US from Synapse Films and in Europe via Arrow Films. Lamberto Bava's mashup of zombie and demon movies benefited hugely from Simonetti's highly rhythmic, bass-friendly score, which also featured an incredibly addictive main title and chase theme. 2015 also marked the score's reissue from Italy's Rustblade Records, which remastered and expanded the original album and issued the score both digitally and on distinctive vinyl releases, plus a special bonus album that included remixes of the film's main themes by other artists. In our conversation, Simonetti discusses crafting the score, the remixes, the great sound engineering typical of Italian soundtracks of the 1970s and 1980s, vinyl releases, an upcoming recording of Goblin's Profondo Rosso Deep Red score by his new band, Claudio Simonetti's Goblin, set for release later this year by Rustblade, and the possibility of releasing Simonetti's music for the silent 1922 classic Nosferatu. In regards to Demons, I just wonder if we could start with some background on how you came to score the film and whether Lamberto Bava gave you some specific suggestions on the score.
Oh yes, I was contacted by Lamberto because Dario Argento was the producer of the film. So Dario suggested to Lamberto to ask me to write the music. At that time, I met Lamberto Bava for the first time, and when I started to write the music for the film, actually I didn't have any suggestion by Argento or Lamberto. They leave me free to do what I want to do. And I proposed them to do something very electronical, and it's just a kind of a music of the 80s. I did the same for the Dario Argento's Tenebre. I used the drum machine and the vocoder. And so I decided to have more or less the same sound for Demons. They loved this idea, and then I started to write the music in this with this style.
Did you have several themes already worked out, or were there some themes that you had tried out with Bava just to see if they would sort of suit the direction of the film?
No, because in the 80s, many directors they decide to have the music in a film, just not all. Made by the original music for the film, but it's sometimes they use a compilation of many songs. For example, in Demons they use bands like Go West, Billy Idol, and even I don't like this way to do the soundtracks, because I prefer the original soundtracks for the entire film. But I understand that in the 80s they love to have a compilation of many famous artists. So I wrote some themes, then like Demons and the other included in this album. And with the editor, we decided to cut the music for the scenes. It's a different way to work because now I work a different way, because I now I use the computer. I can write the music exactly with everything of the film, but not in 1985. So I record some themes and then they cut and put in the scenes.
On Rustblade's CD, there's several bonus tracks, including some demos and some unreleased cues.
These are the original demos that I proposed to Argento and Bava, and they loved this. After in studio, I use more tribal voices and different sound.
I don't know if it's a source cue, but I think it's called Demon Lounge. And it's a
No,
really...
Demon Lunch is something new that I wrote just especially for this record. I recorded 2 months ago.
Okay, because I was wondering, like, it sounds very contemporary, but it's a really interesting spin on the theme.
This is a new version that I wrote especially for this release, and this is a new edition, new version of Demon's Lunch. And so when Stefano of Rustblade, he told me, why you don't you write something new, a new version of Demons? I say, okay, let me try. I want to do something different, and that's why I did this arrangement.
Did you perform the keyboards on that cue?
Yes.
Because I have to say, like, I've always enjoyed your keyboard playing, because I always find that there's a little bit of jazz in there as well, and it's always extremely elegant the way that you do your solos.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I know I have a lot of keyboards and plugins, so I love to mix vintage and new together.
In terms of vintage instruments, obviously the instruments that were played for the Demon score, they're very unique, and I remember that you also appeared in a documentary on the Mellotron, I think a couple of years ago, and you talked about how unique the instrument
American
was.
one.
Yeah, and I guess for yourself, I think one of the reasons why the Demon score is still so popular is there is a resurgence of electronic sounds, specifically those from the 1980s. And I wonder how you feel about how there's sort of this appreciation for the skill that went into composing some really great electronic scores and just the unique sounds of the instruments.
You know, every age has a different sounds of the instruments. Of course, in the 70s, we didn't have many instruments. I just had mini Moog and Moog and Hammond organ or a Fender piano and some string keyboard until the real electronical era started at the end of the 70s with the coming of the MIDI. My first MIDI keyboard, it was a Yamaha DX7. And the one that I use more in the Demons, when you hear the bass is made by Yamaha DX7 and I use the Lin 9000 and as a drum machine, and so I use these all new instruments, including the mellotron, but I use the tribal voices, real voices. This was the period that I start work just only with the synthesizers, because with Goblin I used a lot of keyboards, but not very experimental except for Suspiria. Suspiria was the film where I used the big Moog System 50, but the real sound with electronic music I started in the 80s with Tenebrae, also with Phenomena, and then with the Demons.
I think what a lot of people really enjoy about those scores is that from those specific instruments, I mean, you mentioned the bass, for example. The bass is incredibly profound and resonant and warm, and then there's also just the chords that you get from the synthesizers themselves, which are really, really thick and I guess again, you could say they're very warm.
This is the Yamaha DX7 bass. It's a typical Yamaha sound.
Yeah, and I guess
of the 80s.
When the score was being prepped for remastering, obviously there's a difference when you listen to something that was remastered, say, 10 or 15 years ago, because the technology that was used to bring it up to contemporary standards was quite different. So often now when you listen to a remastered score, I mean, it's a lot more rich because the technology is much more superior, and I think it picks up more of the nuances of the original recording. But for yourself, when you were tasked with revisiting the original master tapes, I guess, one, were the tapes in good condition, and two, was there anything that you had to do that was kind of unique in bringing them up to contemporary standards?
Yeah, for first, I record the Demon soundtracks with the tapes. We didn't have any digital support in the 80s, so I recorded in a 24 tracks with the Studer, and the sound was made, and the first release was on vinyl and the LP. So, of course, with the vinyl, you cannot hear all the instruments because I love vinyls and the sound of vinyls, but it's not so clear like digital. So I have a lot of new CDs of the old bands, like Genesis, King Crimson, Gentle Giant. When I hear now the mastering with the CD, I hear something that I never heard with the LP, because some frequencies are covered in LP. So now, for example, now when I listened for the mastering of Demons, I heard something and I said, "Wow, I forgot these small sounds in the background," because in the LP he cut it this some frequencies. Of course, I love the vinyls because I have a different sound. It's more warmer, comparing to the CDs. But the CDs gives you more precision for any instrument you use during the recording.
Was it your idea to release the album on both CD as well as vinyl? Because there is a resurgence of vinyl that's been going on, especially with electronic soundtracks from the 1980s.
Oh yes, no, of course. Now I'm very happy that the vinyls are coming back, because I think the people, especially the young people, they don't like to buy CDs because they don't need the CD. Because now the custom is that they hear music directly on the phones, on smartphones, or so you don't need to buy the CD. You can just download from the internet the music you need, and so the object CD, I think it will finish very soon. But I'm glad that LP is turning back, because it's a beautiful object. You can have this big record on your hand. You can read exactly what is written, because with a CD you need a lens to read what is written on CDs. So the real object for collection is the vinyl, not the CD, except for the special boxes like Rustblade made for many of their products, including Demons, that there is a metal box with a gift with some gadgets inside. So this is a good idea to sell the CD, but only the CD now has no reason to exist for me.
And just in going back to the Demon's main theme, I just wondered if, after you composed it and mixed it, did you realize that you composed an incredibly addictive main theme? Because it's, for myself anyways, it's impossible not to think of the movie without immediately hearing that theme song playing in my head, especially the little catchy hip-hop lyrics that appear.
Oh, I don't know. At the moment, when I read the music, I like the sound, and but the same happened with the Deep Red from the film Deep Red. When we recorded the soundtrack, we never supposed that we could sell 4 million copies of the record. I'm still surprised when people like you or people loves my music or loves some themes, and I'm very surprised. It's fantastic. But actually, I can't tell if my work is good or not, because I'm the composer.
And then Rustblade's release also includes a bonus disc that has remixes of the main themes. And I wondered, Some of them are really, really clever, and I wonder if there's any of them that stand out for you, especially in the way that a theme was deconstructed and then kind of reconstructed, both with a really original sound or even some sound effects to give it a different design.
Yeah, I heard the remakes, the covers, and everyone is different from the other. So they did very good work. I was very glad, and it's fantastic to hear what people can do with your music and change. And even because I worked a lot for dance music, especially at the end of '70s and beginning of '80s. I worked a lot on dance music, so that's why I like and I enjoy, because I come from the rock bands, but I also play a lot of dance music, so I love both.
Worship God above and Satan down here.
Probably my favorite of your electronic scores is the Card Player, which I think is a really underrated score because there's some really interesting use of technology in there, as well as jazz, because I think there is some jazz underpinnings in that score as well.
Oh yeah, I like the Card Player. I love this soundtrack because it's completely electronical, and I put many styles in this soundtrack, including, yes, of course, jazz and electronical, then something dance. Every time I like to change. It's like the last films with Dario. I used to be orchestra with choir and no electronical. Some soundtrack is more rock or it's more electronical.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to be boring, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if we could move on to Profondo Rosso, because I understand that Rustblade is preparing a reissue of that score.
We recorded a new version of the score with my new band, Claudio Simonetti Goblin, and we recorded the soundtrack exactly like the original one. And this was released 3 months ago, an EP with four songs, but was released just in Italy. But now with Rustblade, we will distribute the more complete version of the album.
For Profondo Rosso, I mean, I wonder if we can maybe use that as just a stepping stone for a discussion a little bit about the Italian sound engineers from the 70s and 80s, because I interviewed Fabio Frizzi late last fall, and we talked a little bit about them as well, just because there's a whole group of soundtracks that were done in the 70s and 80s, and the way these scores were engineered, I mean, they're really exquisite. They're very intimate, they're very close-up. The sound is incredibly rich, and I wonder for yourself if there's anything that you can think of that perhaps explains why so many of the scores from that period, at least to me anyways, I can't imagine they require very much upgrading for a new release, simply because they were recorded so well.
I'm lucky because I have still my sound engineer that I use in studio and live is the same engineer that is 35 years he works with me, so I have still the same sound engineer, so he knows very well what I want when I record. But in the 70s we had a different kind of hardware, for example, the mixers and the tapes, the Dolby, the microphones, everything was different. And of course, if you use valvular microphones or mixer, you have a different sound. Now it's too digital, I don't like digital. For example, when I do concerts live, we always ask for not digital mixes, and we prefer analog instruments because the sound is different. We have a lot of problems with the digital mixers because sound is thinner and has no, it's not warm. It's something really bad. I don't like. That's why in the 70s was possible to record this kind of music with a different sound because we use a different hardwares, and of course also the sound engineers was different. They came from a different background. The young now people that works in the studio, they don't know, for example, how to record the orchestra or how to record the drums in a certain way, and it's a different generation.
I think for myself, I just have a very special affinity for the sound engineers that were used for so many of these recordings, because a lot of them, I mean, everything is very rich and very clear. I mean, you get the resonance from the strings, you get a lot of beautiful bass from the electric instruments as well, and they're just so cleanly recorded. And there was also a sort of a certain aesthetic where there wasn't any need to add any kind of excessive echo or reverb or anything false, because they realized that they could mic the musicians in such a way that they brought out sort of the truest possible performance that they could get from that recording session.
No, you know why? Because when you record digitally, when you put together many tracks digitally recorded, sound is not very. Sometimes it's confused a little. It's, I don't know. I don't know how. It's hard to explain. But if you listen for the Beatles record or the Rolling Stones, you can hear not many instruments together, but it's a perfect sound because sound is very warm and very well recorded because of the microphones, because of the studio. Also, the studio is very important because you have these halls in studio, these rooms that maybe doesn't exist anymore, except in very old studios. And this is very important, where you record and how you record and what arrangement you use. So there are too many reasons why the sound is different after 40 years. Mm-hmm. When I listen for Profondo Rosso, the original record, it's beautiful because I remember it was recorded with one mixer. It was a Siemens, a German Siemens. For example, every channel has the pan pot that doesn't exist. So the pan pot was left, right, and center. You couldn't use the sound just a little bit on the right, left, or a little bit on the right. No, just right, left, or center. If you listen for Satisfaction of Rolling Stones, the stereo version, you will hear the drums and bass on the right and guitar and vocals on the left. So if you exclude the right channel, you just listen for the guitar without drums. It's unbelievable. It's funny.
Yeah, it is. It is funny. Kind of ingenious, and I guess maybe from those kind of restrictions, it forced everybody to kind of really think where they want the sound to come and how rich they should play, so that way there is a balance between both channels.
Yeah, especially if you listen for the soundtracks of the 50s, 60s, was mono, not stereo, and the sound is incredible.
Mono's kind of gotten a bad rap because if you listen to some of the older jazz recordings, they were just recorded in mono, and they sound beautiful.
Yeah, especially the first Beatles records, it was in mono.
Well, I wonder if I could just ask you one last question, and it's in regards to Nosferatu, because I understand that you composed a large orchestral score for the silent film.
Yes, I wrote my soundtrack for Nosferatu because it was 2001. I was called in Paris to play Nosferatu live, and the people there, they told me that in this festival they would like to see me play something like that. And I said them, okay, but I have enough time. So I just wrote the first 20 minutes of the film, and I presented in Paris in 2001. But later, I was called in Montpellier Festival, and they asked me to write, to present the entire soundtrack for the film. So I worked for 6 months, and I composed the entire film that I presented in Montpellier Festival. The film is about 1 hour and 40, and was an incredible experience for me because I never did this before, and just keyboards live with the film. And I'm sorry because I never recorded this soundtrack. I just presented just another time in Italy, in Trento, and I just performed 3 times Nosferatu. But as I told to Rustblade, I asked them why we don't do one version with the DVD and my music of Nosferatu. Now we are looking for the rights and the way to realize to do this. I hope we can do it.
Yeah, I think it'd be wonderful because I think for a lot of composers, they must find scoring a silent film really special because you don't have to worry about any dialogue or any sound effects, and it's not just the music, but it's also your performance and your instinctive reactions to what's going on, and it's got to be a heck of a challenge where it's just you, the film, and you have to keep playing the whole time.
Yeah, yes, this is an unbelievable, incredible experience, because it's just you and the film with no dialogues. I think that the first sound on the film made was the music, even if they never recorded, because in the beginning of the last century, all the film were presented with the musician playing live, like piano in a small cinemas or with orchestra in a big cinemas. So then when later when it was possible to record the soundtrack, they recorded also the dialogues and the music. But the first real soundtrack was for the film was music, and now playing live the music during the scoring of the film is beautiful. I'm doing this also with my band. We are playing. It's 2 years. We are playing around. I play Suspiria, Dawn of the Dead, and Profondo Rosso. We play live the score during the projection of the film in the same parts of the original. And this is very successfully experience we are doing.
I hope that Nosferatu does eventually make its way to DVD, because it would be great to see the two combine. And I really want to thank you for taking the time to speak to me about these amazing works that you've done. And
thank you.
Yeah, and also I just wanted to add that I also had the pleasure of seeing you perform in Toronto at the Opera House back in 2013, and just want to thank you for a really great performance and for coming to Toronto to be there, because it was a very special event for everyone. It's a night that I'll never forget because it was a wonderful performance.
Oh, thank you very much, and I hope to be back again, because also for me it was a beautiful experience. It was my first tour in America, so it was unbelievable. Incredible experience, and I hope to do many other times, especially in Canada.
The new CD and LP editions of Claudio Simonetti's Demons is available from Rustblade Records at rustblade.com. Demons on Blu-ray is available from Synapse Films in North America and Arrow Films in Europe. My review of the soundtrack album will appear in an upcoming issue of Rue Morgue magazine, followed by an expanded review at KQEK.com, where you can also read reviews of Demons 1 and 2. Special thanks to Claudio Simonetti for his generous time, Rustblade Stefano Rossello for discussing the production of vinyl albums in a related print Q&A at KQEK.com, and Fernando Maestrello for facilitating both interviews. If you like this podcast, please visit KQEK.com's Facebook page and follow our Twitter feed at mondomark_KQEK. All podcasts are available via Libsyn, iTunes, and YouTube. The editorial skills responsible for this podcast are also available for hire. If you require audio editing, mixing, and cleaning up interview recordings prior to publication, Please visit mondomark.com for more info and to hear demo reels. Until next time, this is Mark R. Hassan, editor of KQEK.com. This podcast is copyrighted 2015 by Mark R. Hassan.